important to see what we mean by business process is that they are a set of activities that these activities are put together in order to produce some outcome to a certain customer. So it's very important when you think about any process, and particularly business process, you have to think about why do we have this business process? What is this business process is trying to achieve? What is the outcome, and which particular customer is this business process set up for? But also the other part of the business process that we have to think about are what are the different activities related to this process? What needs to be done in order to achieve this outcome for the customer? Some example of business process. So if we talk about in area such as university, the student enrollment, this is a business process, and the main objective of it is that at the end of this process, the student will be enrolled on a particular course. We have a course design, and this is these are processes. It's a process that the university need to go through in order to produce a product which is a course. So this is how they design a course, which usually include market research to see if the course is going to be successful. Try to think about what module could be in that course, what is the target audience for the course. So there are a number of activities that are related to that process, and they put together in order to design a course as the outcome for that process. Another process that most of you are very familiar with is how to open a new account in a bank. So those are, what type of activity do you think opening a new account will have?
Verification of ID.
Yeah, verification ID.
Taking details for person details.
Exactly, yes. Preparing restaurant more, sort of preparing a meal, which will include maybe take the ingredient, getting a recipe, and so on. Retail store, the most common one is selling a product or hiring a new employee. And we will see that there is a difference between this type of process and the hiring an employee. So what trigger a business process? Most of the time these processes are triggered by external events to the business, and it's usually comprised of number of activity. In order, which is quite important, is to have the business outcome as a response for a certain trigger. So there is before you start the opening an account, there should be a trigger, which is a request from a new customer to open an account. So there is always something that will trigger that process, and it's very important that not only you will think about when analyzing an environment, not only you think about what this process is trying to achieve, but also what triggered this process. When does it start? What are the events that will lead to this process starting? Most of the time, these processes are there to take some sort of input and at the end provide some output. And this input and output are from different forms. So for example, the process for making a meal, it might include a request from a client in the restaurant to producing the actual meal on the table, or for opening an account. That's something that will include gathering the information about the customer and then opening the account as well. Most of the time, these processes are not done in one single organization unit. So for example, if you think about your enrollment process, you had to go to finance, you had to go to the, come to the academic class, go to other things. So there are a number of units that are involved in one single process, trying to achieve one outcome. And that's another thing that you have to think about when you are trying to analyze a certain process. What are the different organization units that are involved in that process? But most importantly, that a process deliver an outcome to external or internal stakeholder. Sometimes, and most of the time, not sometimes, the processes are interlinked. You don't have one process in isolation. Like we have seen in the example, where we have seen that the retail one is selling product, but the other one is hiring an employee. So those two processes are important for the retail, but they are different types. One is core, because this is it will achieve the main business outcome, whereas the other one is more internal to the organization. So we distinguish two type of processes. The core process, which satisfy usually external customer, and have a directly add value to the business. That's quite important. And usually they respond to a customer trigger. But also, as important as those processes, there are other types which are more internal. For example, all the HR processes, although they don't add direct value to the business within, for example, the university, but without having HR processes, there won't be any teacher standing up in the class. And usually they don't add direct value. Also, we distinguish different patterns that can exist in the processes. For example, we have case processes. This is where you have a certain information that pass from one unit to another, and the data for that entity get transformed. So for example, if you have an insurance claim, the process to deal with the insurance claim is mainly going from one unit to another until the claim is resolved. You have other things where it's event-driven, where the event will trigger the process. For example, opening an account or selling a product or something. So this is where you start selling if the customer arrives. The other type is cycling-driven processes. These are processes that run on iteratively in different time. For example, at the end of the month, you will have all payroll type of processes kicking off. Or, for example, on a weekly basis, although those are processes, you will have some backup type of processes, something along those lines. The last pattern that you might have in processes are state maintaining processes. These are processes that are there mainly to try to maintain the state of certain object within the business. Can you think of an example of such process? It's getting very hot here, and I can see people, and I bet the tone of my voice is going, please. Be careful, I don't want anyone to see me. Shall we open it? So what type of, can you give me an example?
Maintaining temperature.
No, I was.
Yeah, oh well, yeah, that might be where you try to maintain that everything. But one very obvious one in the retail. Yes. Stock maintaining thing is where all the process is there to make sure that the stock level of the product is maintained at a certain level. So most of the processes are there.
Could that not be the event driven as well?
So, sorry?
Could that not be event driven? Because when
No.
stock gets to a certain level, you may trigger an event.
It's not, the stock thing is not done because somebody is taking it's more checking that the stock level is right. That will trigger the.
Because in a retail system, you'd have, if I went and go buy something from stock, and then as soon as it reaches a certain level, it may trigger an event.
It's not done when you bought that, but it's done more check. There's a separate process that check the number of that thing before it will.
Because retail's moving more to real time.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a similar question. I mean, can't you have, like...
But most of the things, these are example, there isn't a rule that the process has to be one or the other. It's more a pattern, and these are here to make you think about when you have a certain situation, to think, okay, I need to think about what are the core processes. Is there any case process? Is there this? So you think about all these, and you try to find the processes that achieve these things.
So presumably you can have a process that comes into more than one category.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, right.
Yeah. These are mainly techniques to help you analyze.
Yeah.
So one of the things why we started having approaches to analyze business processes, model tools, there are a lot of things that has been done around business processes. Just to look at the number of vendors that sell support for capturing business processes is immense. And that's mainly due that people are finding it very hard to deal with the complexity that are associated with the business processes. Because of the different environment that we are in. So a lot of enterprise have subsidiaries. They might be outsourcing some part of their business. They will do business online, so they might have B2B business thing. And within the organization, they might have different branches. So all this add a lot of complexity to any process that exists within enterprise, and therefore we need a lot more tools and techniques to help us understand these processes and also support them, and mainly support these processes. So to analyze these processes, we will try to generate information about them. So any information related to this process, including what activities, but also who are the stakeholders that exist with that, and then we will identify what are the need to change these processes and make them more performant. And most of the time when we look at these processes, most of the time we will end up with producing a system that will make this process. Still the main technique to gather information about the processes are the interviews, observation, and then the main one is the process model. So I'm not going to go through the interviews and observation. We will concentrate on the process model. Okay, so why and particularly in the business process, we need the models. Mainly to provide visualization of what we understand of the process. Also show the relationship between the different activity and object within that process. The model allow us to concentrate on one aspect of the complexity that exists, and therefore we will be concentrating on that and understanding it better. So it's very useful in a way. And once we have a model, we can take that model and use it in a different situation by either adapting it or just using it as it is. So it's very useful in that way. But most importantly is that it's communication. It has the communication. So if when we're using the same language for describing this process using the modeling language, and we go and talk to the customer or we talk to the different stakeholders, there is the thing, we don't have to explain all the notation because it's well understood, and therefore it's easy to do. The other thing is that most of these languages allow us to have different detail. So you have, most of them will have some pictorial description of the model, and then you have more detailed description in the more textual format. So the different level of detail allow us to understand and have better communication about what we need. Particularly on the business model, we have business process, excellent communication devices, and it's unbelievable when you show it to customers how much they like those business processes. I have been asked many times, and other colleagues, and I know that once you show them, you have talked to them, you have captured their process in the business process model, they like it to have it on the wall. I have been asked many times, just to see how it is, and so that what's in their head, what they do, is already in the picture. So it's a very excellent communication device for the stakeholder. It also, when you have the business process in the model, you can look at different alternatives for the solution if you are planning to build a system to support that process. You can see how which activity can change and the different alternatives. And mainly this will be helping in designing the IT system. And of course, the business process has had people that do business process modeling and analysis are not all the time IT literate. IT people, usually they are people that are more business analysts rather than developers. So it's bridged, or they have done a little bit of IT, not too much, and they bridge the gap between. Okay, now, what do we mean exactly by business process modeling? So the modeling or the mapping of the business into a model is the activity that creating a business process map of what are the different activities within the business. So the map will show the different activities. It will show the output. It will show any task or any and the sequence of the activity. Most of the time, when we do business analysis or business model, you will hear the term as-is business model and to-be business model. So the as-is process model is when you try to capture how is it done now, what are the different activities and so on. And then the to-be, so once you have it as captured, you then introduce the changes that are needed to make this re-engineer that process, and we talk about to-be. Most of the time, the to-be will include some automation of some activities and the introduction of some information system to support those activities. But it could be as simple as re-engineering the process, not even with an IT. But here is an example where as-is process was to take different order for an order, different items that might be included in the order, and then you want to streamline the orders and just combine all those items in one single order. Okay. When we are modeling, we need to model different aspects. So we need first to describe the control. So that will capture the sequence of activities, what order each activity has to be executed. So when opening the bank account, do we need first to do credit check of the customer, or do we need to do their identity check, or do we need to take their balance if they have to deposit money, or what are the different activities, the sequence of the activity that we have to do. The other aspect that we have to capture is the organization aspect. And this is mainly to capture who is responsible for what. And also capturing what are the different units that are involved in this process. The third aspect is informational aspect, and this is, remember that any process is there to achieve a certain outcome, and they transform some of the object. So the information is describing what object need to be processed by this process. That need to be involved in this process. What are the information required for this process? The other aspect that we have to think about is the event. What can trigger activities, but also some activity can trigger events themselves. So for example, customer order received is an event that will trigger opening an account process. But once in the order processing process, when the order confirmation is created, that's an event that will be generated to let the customer know that the order has been dealt with. Data processed by activity, most of the, and it's quite good to be thinking once you are modeling the process, this activity, what data is involved is needed by this activity. Because once you have that, later on, when you are implementing the information system, you will know what are the different information that you have to create in that IT system. Most of the activities you have an employee responsible for them, but these we have to think about them as organizational units. So we have to identify what are the units that are specific for that for particular activity, and usually the employee might play different roles depending on what our organization unit they have been assigned. The most common languages for modeling business processes is the UML, which has been one step further than the flowchart. But nowadays, most people will use BPMN notation. This is a language that allows for somebody to model the business process, capture the model, and then be able to execute that model straight away by deploying that business process to an engine. So the business process is not just as a model, just for capturing the information, but also for executing this information. BPMN has been started as a response to service-oriented architecture, so it's based mainly on services. In this class, we're not going to look at business process modeling. We're going to mainly concentrate on UML. However, if anyone is more interested in BPMN, I have put an introduction paper on Blackboard. Welcome to see it. If you need more information, let me know. For example, what tool can support BPMN, or have an example of BPMN. I'm happy to show you. Okay. Regardless, they are very similar, by the way. The UML and BPMN is just BPMN is much richer than UML. The UML activity diagram. Modeling aspect of business process will therefore involve the actors. We have to identify what are the business units, what are the people involved. Is there any concurrent activity? So it's very important when we are looking at the control flow to identify all the activity that can run in parallel. Because once we have done that in the implementation, we then have the choice to either do it in parallel or as a sequence. Whereas if everything is a sequence, you will have to have it in sequence. So it's very important to have as many, if it's possible, the concurrent activity. However, some activity need to be in sequence, and therefore we need to have a synchronization point where a task can only start if the other task has finished. And we need to show that. Any process usually have a start and an end point. They need to start somewhere and end. So that's the first thing when you try to model any process. You can start by having the start and the end, at least. Okay, hopefully you're all familiar with UML activity diagram, and this is just a reminder what they are. The activity diagram have a number of elements. So they have activity, And this is how you describe an activity. So for example, get customer information, process the order, any activity can pick up. The control flow, this is showing from one activity how you go to another. Object node, this is the information that gets transformed by the activity. As I said just now, that any process will have an initial state and final state. So one of them. The fork and join is the synchronization, and you might have to have a decision to decide which way the sequence is. So here is an example of an activity diagram. You notice it has got a start and end point. It has got a number of activity. So for example, initial contract, initial opportunity of work. We have a decision point where we have either go this way or we go this way. So here, and then we have this guarded condition that shows what condition we have to go on each side. Here we have a synchronization point where we have two paths that we can follow. So this bit and this bit will be running in parallel. So we have communication with the customer to optimize is one part, and we have this bit that will run in parallel. At this point, we could have three activities that can run in parallel, and this activity can start only if when these three activities have finished. Yeah? So three activities in parallel, then when they finish, because we have a synchronization bar here, it's only when they finish that this activity will start. You can go back and reiterate. So this is showing that depending on the condition here, you might go at the start or go to the end of the process. Have I lost you all now? Two more slides, and then we have a slide to waking up a brain. Any of this process, as we said, we need to identify the organization unit. Yeah, the way we are modeling the organization unit is to use a swim lane. These are showing who is responsible for what activity. And so most of the time you have transition between the swim lanes. So for example, here we have a sales swim lane and fulfillment swim lane. So each one of them represent an organization unit, and everything that comes under this swim lane is a responsibility of the sale, and all the activity coming on this swim lane will be responsibility of this swim lane. Question?
Very similar to something like a sequence diagram.
No. No. Sequence diagram is a design of a software system. This is more capturing a process that exists. Yeah? This doesn't show you how a system will run. Okay? Here is an exercise to wake you up. I think you all need this. So this exercise is for you to draw a UML UML model for this process. The process is credit card application. Here a client applied for credit card. The customer service department received the application and request a credit check from the credit bureau for the client, which processes the request. The customer service department received the client credit rating from the credit bureau. If the client's credit rating is unacceptable, it's sent to the client a rejection letter. Otherwise, it will send the client a credit card, and only on receipt of the card that the customer will activate the card. Okay? So remember, we're using UML activity item. You need to think about the swim lane, you need to think about the trigger, you need to think about object, you need to think about the flow of activities. Start, it's a good practice to start putting the swim lane first. Use pen and paper. I'm not asking you to do it on the tool. Later on, for your assignment, you might use Sarion and here just pen and paper.
Yeah? Is it the blue Reebok one? Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.